And then I thought, okay, if I could just help one child not have to go through the emotional turmoil that I went through, then that's what I wanted to do. And so began my work with teaching incarcerated juveniles, incarcerated children. Some of the children that I teach are 10 years old. And I remember the very first time I went into a jail and worked with a 10-year-old child. First of all, I thought, what kind of a society? Where am I? What is this planet Earth that we have to incarcerate children? And what is it that makes children do the things that would want us to want to incarcerate them?
Hi everyone, this is Tammy Ramsey. Today on this episode of Get Leveled, we have Akuyoe Graham, who is a pioneer in the field of criminal justice reform. She's an award-winning actor, author, and educator, and she founded the Spirit Awakening Foundation in 1995, back when it wasn't popular, when no one was talking about criminal justice reform. And she did it because she wanted to give detained and at-risk youth the internal and external tools to grow beyond their circumstances. Akuyoe has been nominated in the same category as Oprah Winfrey and is a true humanitarian. There's been a lot of talk in the news about criminal justice reform lately, which is extremely hopeful. But for the past 24 years, when people didn't understand this issue, Akuyoe was out there advocating for and humbly healing the wounds of these kids. I remember her telling me that when she first started, people not only were not interested, but they feared the word spirit and spirit awakening. In reality, she wasn't practicing witchcraft or anything. She was actually providing tools to these children so that they could break through the armor that inevitably gets built as a result of childhood trauma. So let's hear what Akuyoe can teach us. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I am wonderful, Tammy. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to talk to you. It's been so long.
It has been, and I'm thrilled and honored and grateful to be able to speak with you, Tammy.
Oh, well, you're one of my favorite people, and you don't waste time on the surface, and you live a very intentional life. So that's why I really wanted to talk to you. Is really about, how you are helping society's forgotten children. Before we get into that, though, can you just describe what your life was like growing up?
My life growing up was really interesting in the truest sense of that word. I was born in Ghana, West Africa, in Accra, in the capital. And then at the age of 6, I emigrated to Europe, to the United Kingdom, to London specifically. So I was in London from the age of 6 to 13, and then we emigrated to the United States, to New York City. So as a child, what I remember most is all the traveling that we did, leaving Africa, going to Europe, traveling to different countries in Europe before coming to the United States. And so I believe that really helped to influence and color my world. Being around different things, whether it's different food, different weather, different architectural landscapes, differences don't scare me. I know that they are a part of the fabric of life. I also learned at a young age that being attached to things was probably not the best way to live my life, and to live with a sense of, okay, things change, things come to an end and they move on and it changes. So I learned to adapt to change and to be accepting of change at a very young age.
I remember watching your TED Talk talking about coming from Ghana and landing in the UK. Can you describe how that was?
Yes, there's a line in my play where I talk about being a speck of pepper in a sea of salt. And I think that image really does illustrate the experience I had back at that time. I grew up in an era when things pertaining to Black Africans and to the African continent, sub-Saharan Africa in particular, was really negative. And so to suddenly find myself in Europe, in London, and being a dark-skinned African child was a very difficult transition. Suddenly, I was wrong. Everything about me was wrong. The way I looked, the way I spoke, it was a very painful adjustment. And I just remember also one of the popular TV shows at the time was Tarzan, which was about a European man who finds himself in some remote part of Africa, living in the jungle and having to teach the natives pretty much how to live and how to survive. And that was just so detrimental. I hated that show because of the way it depicted Africans. You know, we were depicted as being really stupid and animalistic, and it just was not a warm and fuzzy feeling. And so I just remember as a child being embarrassed all the time and not wanting to be associated with anything African. And yet there I was, you know, I had features, I have a face that is very African. So I couldn't really escape myself, but I tried. But I couldn't. I'm an actor by profession and a writer. I do many things. And I can say this truly. I'm a very good actor because I had to learn how to act. You know, on the one hand, as a child, I put on a face of being happy and well adjusted. I learned how to speak English very well. I spoke the Queen's English. You know, I learned how to enunciate my words so that I could pass in a certain way to be thought of as intelligent. Yet inside of me, I was deeply troubled and deeply anxious and really traumatized, you know, as a result of some of the bullying that I experienced because of my ethnicity, my culture, because of the way I looked, things that I could not do anything about. And so I learned how to act as if everything was all right when everything was not all right.
So do you think that experience is why you have empathy for children today and why you wanted to start Spirit Awakening?
Yes, absolutely. In the work that I've been doing all these years, what I absolutely know is that people who have suffered deep trauma are really potentially some of the most compassionate people that there is, because they understand a certain level of pain, they understand a certain level of trauma, and given the opportunities, they really have such enormous compassion and the ability to forgive. And I see that all day long with the children that I work with in the juvenile facilities.
What do you do at Spirit Awakening?
Over 20 years ago now, I can't even believe it, I wrote a one-woman play called Spirit Awakening, which was to tell the story really of my transitioning back to myself, of my learning how to unmask what I call my authentic voice, how to live in the world as my true self. So the play received really great reviews. And so I started touring with it. Simultaneously, I was invited to perform in schools, and I was invited to go to John Muir High School in Pasadena because there had been some school shootings there, and they were looking for programs to bring to the school. They wanted me to come and perform my play, and they'd heard that I was working with young people. So I founded Spirit Awakening Foundation, which is an arts organization that works with young people, children, and quote unquote at-risk youth, system-involved youth. And in the beginning, I started as a volunteer, volunteering my services in the juvenile facilities. In fact, at a place called Barry J. Nydorf Juvenile Hall, which is in Sylmar, I started in the special handling unit with the young people, young men that were about to be transitioned to prison. And so I began working there with storytelling. I used the same techniques that I used to write my play. I brought those techniques to the young people so that they could begin to do what I call unmask the authentic voice. And so fast forward 25 years later, I am still doing that work. Spirit Awakening Foundation now collaborates with the Los Angeles Probation Department, the Los Angeles County Office of Education, the Los Angeles County Arts Commission. We have grown. I've been able to employ many artists, actors, writers, dancers, musicians to bring their talents and gifts to the children that are incarcerated. And it's really a wonderful opportunity to work with these young people, you know, to help lift them so that they can learn to love themselves, to trust themselves when all else has failed them.
Yeah, it's beautiful that you started this. It's such important work. These children, many have been abused already, and then they
Yes,
get re-victimized through society, and then we incarcerate them. And
that's
one of the
right.
most moving lines in your TED Talk was, what society would lock children up?
Oh, yes. What would make children do the things they do that society would want to lock them up? I really wanted to get to the heart, to the root of these problems, because it is quite an indictment for any society to lock up its children. You can discern what a society is truly like by how it treats its weakest, most vulnerable citizens. Well, some of our most vulnerable citizens are our children. They look
Hmm.
up to us as adults to show them the way, to model good behavior, attitudes, forgiveness, and all those wonderful attributes that we can speak about all live long day. But if we're not modeling those attributes for them, if we're not, taking care of them, they are vulnerable. That's an indictment on a whole society, on humanity. And so I wanted to really look at that head on and do whatever I could in my own small way to make a difference in a child's life, because I thought I could hide in characters that I play. I could hide in plays that I read. I could hide in the stories that I told or was told to me. I found an escape through the performing arts, through shape shifting, if you will. And so I wanted to bring those same qualities and abilities to the children. I wanted them to know that there was a way out, that they could escape within themselves, that the way out was in. Life is an inside job. So I really wanted to make that clarion call very loud and clear for them.
That's beautiful. So you actually go in and you help them with meditation, or what do you actually do with them?
At Spirit Awakening Foundation, we have several programs, all really based in our one curriculum, which is called Rites of Passage with a W. And the first level is unmasking your authentic voice. And in that level, we can use, whether it's writing, painting, digital art, graphic design, filmmaking, whether it's music, we use art mediums as the tool to explore themes and certain issues, whether it's identity and looking at, our spiritual identity, not religious. We're not attached to any religious dogma. However, we are a spiritually based arts organization. And so we use meditation practices. We use art forms to explore the themes like identity. With one of our questions, for instance, who am I? Who am I underneath my name, underneath my age, underneath the color of my skin? Who am I underneath what my family thinks about me, what I think about me, even what my friends think about me? Who am I underneath what I think about myself? What is the sound of my true voice? How do I really walk and talk? Who am I? What is my purpose for being alive? And we ask these children to ask themselves those kinds of questions. That's one exercise, actually, from Unmasking Your Authentic Voice. It's one of the first exercises that we implement in our program. And we have others. We look at success and what that really means. And we're not talking just about material success, but what does it mean to be successful in life, and how does one use one's life story, one's experiences? Because again, these children are so resilient. And so if they can take hold of their narrative and not accept the interpretation that society has placed on their narrative, on who they are and the stories of their lives, if they can rather then take that story and take the narrative and place their own interpretation and their own understanding into their story, that can empower them. So they come from a place of being empowered and not from being victims, as
Yes.
society would paint them.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I saw that my family had the pleasure of going to one of your holiday parties, and we got to see the college scholarships be handed out
Yes.
to these kids that were incarcerated and had gone through so much trauma in their lives. And then here they are, like success stories. So my daughters got to look up to them. And that was such a hopeful, promising moment for me.
Oh, Tammy, well, you have such a beautiful family with such a heart of love and service. And I have to give a shout out to your magnificent husband, Brian, who is truly an inspired and brilliant photographer.
I know.
Oh my goodness, the pictures he's taken from our events are really some of the best we've ever had taken. So
Aw,
shout out to Brian and kudos and gratitude.
aw,
Much
yeah.
gratitude to both of you, to all of you and your beautiful daughters as well.
Well, it's always a privilege to be around you and any of your events. I mean, all of them. Voices of the Unheard, that's my favorite event of
Yes.
the year. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yes, it's mine too. Voices of the Unheard is an opportunity where we get to celebrate the resiliency of the young people that are in our programs. So we do a lot of spoken word of the work that has been written in our programs. And these works are brought to life by formerly incarcerated children, now young adults. Some are still, children, and alongside guest artists. So we've had many guest artists. The Reverend Michael Beckwith from the Agape Spiritual Center is one of our favorite guest artists that joins us for Voices of the Unheard. So does Deborah Wilson, the comedian actor. She's such a brilliant actor. Frances Fisher sometimes joins us. So does Hilary Swank. Al Rodrigo, the brilliant actor, joins us when he's available. It's just so beautiful to work with these incredible souls. And then the children, the young people that have gone through the program, many of whom are really gifted. They're great, brilliant writers and spoken word artists. And they just bring a vibrancy and an aliveness to their performances that is really heartfelt. And I think that audiences love this program because when they come to Voices of the Unheard, it really does move them in very real ways, which is something that theater can do in a way that nothing else can. And so Voices of the Unheard is a theatrical event that is very meaningful, it's entertaining, and it matters.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you pointed that out. You put a different spin on all of this. You are using drama and theater to tell the stories of these children, but in such a beautiful way with music, song, dance. You leave a different person. And I mean, it just brings you to tears. So it's different than just talking about it. It's definitely on a different level.
Yes, I agree. I love putting Voices of the Unheard together because it does exactly what it says. These are voices that have been unheard up until now. I think a lot of people have a misconception about children that are incarcerated. And I like to call them children, not minors, not juvenile delinquents. They are children. And I think even just having that awareness is something. And then when you hear their voices, it's easy to just write them off as, gang members or the popular term gangbangers, and any of the other terms that we've
Or
placed
bad
and labeled.
guys.
Yes, it's easy. But my goodness, when you then hear the stories and you say, my goodness, these are children that have been abused physically, emotionally. These are children that have been raped. These are children that have been left to fend for themselves. These are children that unwittingly, unknowingly were born addicted to drugs and alcohol. In India, Gandhi talked about the untouchables. Well, these are America's untouchables, and yet we have to touch them. We have to be willing to touch each other if we want to, have a world that is vibrant and alive and flourishes. Brian Stevenson talks about proximity. Well, that's what we're doing. And we've been doing this work for 24 years. Next year will be our 25th anniversary. If we have these problems and issues and our children are suffering in this way and they're in this much pain and they lash out by inflicting pain on themselves and others, we have to be willing to touch the problem, actually touch it if we want to deal with it. It's not going to go away by just locking them up. I think as a society, as a humanity, as a race of people, and I'm talking about the human race, not one particular ethnicity. As a race of people, we are at a critical time. Maybe we've always been there, where we have to decide how do we want to respond to things that go awry, things that go wrong. Do we want to be punitive? Do we want to punish? and then look at, well, where does that get us? Granted, yes, there are people, there are individuals that, the crimes are so heinous and so really abhorrent. You do have to, take them out of society and put them somewhere so they cannot inflict that kind of pain on anyone else. Granted, we have to be willing to look at it and look at, well, what would make someone want to do that? And address it so others don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So others don't come behind them and do the same thing. And so, yes, we have to be willing to get up close, and yes, personal. We have to be willing to touch one another in terms of to be willing to listen, to be willing to understand, to choose to understand first, and then to be understood as a result. It's interesting when you hear what's going on, when so many of the children, what is very upsetting to me is many of the children, the boys and the girls, that have been raped or trafficked on the streets. When, they get arrested, they're the ones that get arrested. But where are the Johns? Where are the pimps? The people who want to benefit from raping children and having sex with children? Where are they? Where are the people who pay to have sex with a child? Let's lock them up.
Yeah.
Rather than the child. So, that happens so often. Right now, there's a few girls at the camp as I speak that are locked up. And what happened to the pimps that, put them on the streets, that raped them? Are they locked up? And no one knows. They've disappeared. So what does that tell that child? What does that tell the child? And then we want them to leave these places filled full of love and hope. In what world is that going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, we are basically like plants. And if you have a plant and you step on it and don't give it water and sun and all that it needs, it's not going to grow. Now we know we have identified the root of the problem. So we just need to get to the root and start earlier. And it would be great if we made police officers get more training on trauma.
That's right. And maybe there's now room to identify that within law enforcement, perhaps we need to have a real peacemaking branch, that is trained to respond to perpetrators of violence that have been victims of violence themselves. Perhaps we need to start looking at that and taking our resources and training individuals that feel they're called to do that kind of work, so that, peace officers are truly what their name says, peace officers. That's going to require training, and it's not going to be for everyone. There are some people that, quite frankly, don't believe in those kinds of techniques and ways of responding to violence, to responding to criminal activity. There are many people who don't want to do that. Okay, fine. But there are many who do. So why don't we take them and really train them to be peacemakers, train them how to work with the children in the halls and the camps in ways that are not punitive, but that can truly inspire another way of being.
Because it's about healing. It's not about more punishing. They've already been punished. That's why they're lashing out. They're just projecting what was done to them. So now we need to heal, and then they can be better. But I think all I would like to see is a movement toward more compassion and understanding the root of the problem, and then just early intervention, because if you just stop the hurting of the plant earlier, then the plant does better and it grows.
That's right. That's right. I totally agree. That's why I'm so thrilled that through the Arts Commission, we're able to go to high schools. So our work has grown in that, Tammy. We now, of course, continue the intervention work, working with children that are incarcerated. And now we've also branched out to working in the high schools as an intervention program, so that the kids that feel alienated, the ones that have been bullied, the ones that feel like no one gets them, understands them, the ones that have already shown tendencies of violence. We are now there in certain schools and have programs, mentoring programs, arts programs, where they're listening to them and through artistic expression are able to engage them and to let them know that they are being seen and heard, that adults around them are paying attention, that we want to know what they're good at and want to encourage their talents and their gifts. And it's having a real profound effect, and we need to do more. So I'm really thrilled. And funding for that comes through something called the Juvenile Justice Crime Prevention Act, which comes through the probation department to the Arts Commission. And so there are things that are beginning to happen. The probation department does many, many things. And for all the times that they are blamed for everything that is wrong, we also do have to acknowledge the things they do right. They are listening, and they are listening to the communities in which they serve. They are listening, and they know that arts programs are very effective and very powerful, and they are beginning to implement those kinds of things. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And in this instance of the JJCPA funding, going towards prevention is a step in the right direction.
Yes, and I have seen that all around me. I am seeing progress in this direction
There's definitely momentum.
Because you can't unring the bell. Once you realize and know, if you've ever been around a child who has been through trauma, then you understand the trajectory of it. So once you know that, you can't then call them bad guys anymore. They're sad guys and they need help, And so that's why it's so great what you're doing. And don't you think that self-worth is really at the core of all of this?
Oh, absolutely. How one feels about oneself is always a root, core of a lot of issues that humans that we go through humanly. We have to know who we are. We have to know who we are on a deep level, not just the superficial stuff, not just what we're inundated with, day in, day out, in the videos and magazines and the pop songs, all of that is so superficial. And we are deep beings. To be human is such a gift, is such an extraordinary thing to be human, to actually have a body, to be alive, and I think again, it's time to flip the script and really take hold of our narratives, and so we have to reframe these things and be more grateful. My goodness, I'm alive. Okay, I have a problem. I'm still alive. I get to feel. Again, I'm just so grateful that Spirit Awakening came to me, came through me. I am so grateful because it has given my life enormous meaning. I know where I want to put my attention and my resources. I'm so grateful that it has given me deeper meaning for this life that I have the privilege to live, and so to be able to take that message to children, to be able to encourage them and to facilitate and to witness as each child reawakens and remembers who they truly are and remembers that their life has real meaning, to remember that they are, resilient and that they have strength and wisdom within them. To bear witness to that is one of the greatest gifts I could have ever been given.
It really is. And it's hopeful too. That's why your organization makes me feel good. And that's why I like my kids to be around you, because it's very hopeful to see that we can heal from trauma. Like, it's beautiful that these children that have gone through so many hard things, and you help rebuild their sense of self and their self-worth, and you shine the light on them. And then you give them wings to fly, and to see them get scholarships. It's so hopeful. It's not the doom and gloom that I think a lot of people think.
That's right. And that's because, again, that's misinformation. And part of that is because these children, the way they're labeled, the way they're portrayed in the news and all of that. Can you imagine, Tammy, if every time there was a news story about a child that's done something violent or criminal, we said that this was a child, these are children, it would begin to sink in. And I think people's responses would be very different than, in many ways, to label them juvenile delinquents is a way to separate ourselves from them so that we don't have to feel. But when you stop and you say, these children that we are incarcerating, I'm going to a jail to visit a child, that is a very different feeling, and I think, again, we have to stop the condemnation and the judgment that we are so quick to place on people that are different, that are what we deem to be other. I know this because I experienced that as a child myself. It took me a long time to come out of that hypnotic spell of being the other, and to wake up and remember that, no, I am not the other. I too have worth. I am worthy. I am. That's what I had to wake up to. And so I'm so grateful to be able to, again, carry that message to our children. And this year, 2019, marks the 400th commemoration of the Atlantic slave trade. So we are able to take 7 young people, some of whom have been system involved, to Ghana, West Africa. And I'm so excited. We're going to do a little mini safari. We're going to visit the slave castles. This project is called Never Again, Breaking the Chains, Never Again, or Not in My Name. So again, giving young people an opportunity not only to travel, but to, again, look at some of the darker moments of our collective history as a humanity, and to be able to know within themselves that they don't ever have to be a part of something like that, and to do whatever they can to make sure that these kinds of things stop happening or never happen again. So it's very exciting.
What an amazing experience for them. You are literally changing generations with the work that you're doing. It's truly incredible.
It's changed me. And like I said, it's made me so grateful that I have meaning. I have found the meaning for my life, and it doesn't mean that I wake up happy every day. It just means that I know that there's something deeper and greater than all the superficial stuff that gets thrown at all of us with such consistency all the time, and living life with meaning. Oh my goodness. I'm just grateful. I would rather that than not, it just makes for a richer, more diverse, more colorful expression of this gift that is life.
Hearing the stories of the heinous acts that have been committed against these children, has that changed the way you look at society or humanity as a whole?
Well, it just makes me, most days, I try to come out of judgment and condemnation. Who am I to judge anyone? I really do believe in the goodness of people. And I think that's the big thing that this work has given to me. The level of compassion blows me away. I will work with a child who's, incarcerated, and their whole concern might be about their mother on the street. One child, I love sharing this story because I think it really makes the point. There's one child who was very angry, and she was dealing with addiction and so many things herself. And yet, she pulled me aside one day and she says, Miss Akuyo, please, this is the last number I had for my mother. She's on the street. Can you please help find her? And can you help her? Can you help her, maybe place her somewhere? I was so blown away. Here's this kid who needed to just concentrate on themselves, and but she just wanted to make sure her mom was okay. That level of compassion. And so many of the kids, they want to make sure their siblings don't end up in jail like them. They want to make sure that their families get the help that they need. So underneath their hard exterior, which, by the way, is there to protect them, they have so much care, so much compassion and love and forgiveness for the very people that have hurt them the most. It's astounding.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It's the cycle of generational pain.
That's right.
Passed down, and you're going in and breaking that cycle and teaching these children how to heal themselves.
Exactly. One of the things I share with my students all the time is, look, in life, people will let you down. I will let you down. we let ourselves down. So we have to learn how to navigate that, how to navigate those moments when you feel let down, whether it's by someone else or by yourself, and let's start the practice of bringing compassion to ourselves rather than condemning, rather than, judging and going into a state of condemnation or shame or blame. Can we learn, to bring compassion to ourselves in the moments that we let ourselves down? If we can learn to do that for ourselves, then we can learn to do that for others as well. And start there. And that's not a sign of weakness. If anything, it's an incredible sign of strength and courage to be able to meet something disappointing or ugly with love, which doesn't mean that you stay in harm's way. If you're in harm's way, you can move, you can get out of the way, you can leave. However, you don't have to leave in a state of shame or rage. There's nothing wrong with being angry. It's just energy. Feel your anger. Just try not to act from that, because chances are you'll regret whatever action you take when you're in that space of anger or rage. And it's teaching our children what's true, not sugarcoating stuff for them. Let's teach children what's really true about life. Let's teach them skills they can actually use in life. Let's have those kinds of classes in our schools. Let's teach them, what to do when you wake up and you're visited by anger, because it happens even, in the best homes and everything's going well. There are days you wake up and lo and behold, you just are in a funky mood and everything is right. What do they do with that rather than, okay, go eat something, go drink something to push that feeling aside? Let's teach them, and teach ourselves perhaps. Maybe we need to learn so we can teach our children, so there's plenty of room for all of us to examine how we respond, how we come to things, and how we're dealing with life. And what is life? What is this really? What is this all about? I think we need the space to be able to explore, to inquire, to be curious about those things,
Yes, that's why I love you, because you can have deep conversations. It's fun to be curious and
That's right.
wonder. And it's just beautiful that you have dedicated your life to this, because you've had a lot of success as, an actor. You were in American Pie, right?
Yes. Lately I've been doing a lot of independent films. One of my favorite short piece I did is called The Woman in the Photo, which I love. It's just a beautiful piece. It was shot here, but it was set in Ghana. So I got to play a Ghanaian grandmother whose daughter dies of cancer. And the cancer is the metaphor for the horror that visited that family. It's a beautiful little film. And
Wow.
I did another one where I play a police captain called Interference. I think that's playing on Amazon. And I've done a slew of commercials. So yes, I love acting. I love it with all of my heart and soul. And doing voice work. Recently, I did the voiceover narration for Mustang Saviors. It's not out yet. I think is finished. So it should be coming out shortly. And that's a documentary film about equine therapy and how wild Mustangs in Wyoming are used to work with veterans. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. So I get to do meaningful work on so many levels,
I remember you talking about that, having this deep, meaningful work where you are making an impact. Then you can enjoy the films and have fun in the acting, but know that you're really making a difference and taking that theatrical element to healing society's forgotten children. So it's beautiful.
Oh, it's again, what a gift. and maybe it's a, because I am getting older, Tammy, I really do have enormous respect for life and just incredible gratitude for the gift that I've been given, we've all been given, to be alive. I don't want to take not an inch of it for granted. And again, for those listening, it doesn't mean every moment is, joyful every moment. However, I do live in a constant state of joy. That is sort of the base, and yet I still I can feel unhappiness. I can feel pain. and yet it's all couched in this state of joy. And I think that comes from the sense of gratitude, just the gratitude that this is a gift. And I just want to just take this ride for all that it is and that it can be.
It's so fun. And, it's true. I think that we need to keep our mortality very close to us because it allows us to fully live and seize the moment.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely, Tammy.
So if people want to help, how do they go about doing that if they wanted to help your organization?
They can go to our website, which is www.spiritawakening, all one word, spiritawakening.org, spiritawakening.org. There'll be a way for them to connect with us there. And I hope you'll save the date for this year's Voices of the Unheard.
Yes.
It's Friday, November 8th, 2019, 7 p.m. at the Skirball Cultural Center in West Los Angeles here in Southern California.
Okay, great. Well, I look forward to it. It's an amazing experience, and it's always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you, Tammy. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. I always feel inspired after talking with Akuyo, and I hope you do too. She reminds me that this is not somebody else's problem. We really are in this together. Adverse childhood experiences are at the root of so many issues. If we start focusing on early intervention, I believe that our entire society will improve. If you would like to support the Spirit Awakening Foundation or want to learn more about their events, please visit the episode notes and you'll find information there. Thanks for listening. I would like to thank our sponsor, Mary's Jane Beauty, who not only has an amazing line of organic CBD-infused topical products for both hair and skin, but who also invests in at-risk kids through her mentoring program that empowers young people to make bold choices, break the mold, and discover their true passion. To learn more, visit marysjane.com.